Whether one makes contact with Aldous Huxley through his writing or in personal conversation, the impression that comes almost immediately is that of a uniquely versatile, omnivorous intellect, constantly searching and probing with a clean, cold incisiveness. He has been a Western writer who, even as he looked at life with an Eastern perspective, measured it against the backdrop of contemporary science. On the afternoon that we met and talked, I asked him what was basic and substantial in a man's life. I asked him if he could point to specific values and meaning which for him were enduring and veritable.
Well, I think I would want to say that the two essential and important and indispensable things are, first of all, intelligence in the widest possible sense of that word, and goodwill, or in the old-fashioned word, charity, love. I mean, these two things have to go hand in hand, because intelligence and knowledge without goodwill and charity are apt to be inhuman, and goodwill and charity undirected by intelligence and knowledge are apt to be either impotent or misguided. So the two have to go together.
The intelligence factor, is this a very inclusive thing for you?
To me, completely inclusive. I mean, it includes, so far as I'm concerned, what is conventionally called intelligence, what used to be called discursive thought, which is logical thinking in terms of our current scientific and philosophical frame of reference. But it also includes, so far as I'm concerned, the intelligence in the sense of general awareness, of an awareness, so to say, on the non-verbal and non-conceptual level. I mean, we have to have both. I think it's very, very important to insist from the beginning that we are living in many diverse and even, in some sense, incommensurable universes at the same time, and that our business in life is somehow to make the best, not only of both worlds, because there are more than two of all the worlds we live in. And among the worlds we have to make the best of, first of all, this world of discursive thought, the scientific and philosophical and practical world, and at the same time the world of non-verbal immediate experience. These are the two kind of worlds in the worlds of intelligence which we have to make the best of.
I'm intrigued with the dichotomy. Is this also a dichotomy between science on the one hand and poetry or religion on the other? Is it that manner of encompassment that's involved?
In a sense, yes. I mean, the business of the man of letters, it seems to me, and the poet specifically, has been, I suppose, with man's more strictly private experiences, and also with the rendering of the manifold nature of man's experience. I mean, let us consider the question of scientific language and literary language. The essence of good scientific language is that one word shall stand only for one thing. There has to be a sort of one-to-one relationship between the given word and the given event or thing that's being talked about. In regard to literature, the important thing, I think, is to, first of all, to be able to, so to say, express the inexpressible, and secondly, to express the multiple meanings which every event has for a human being. I mean, a human being, as I say, is living in many ways at once, and any good work of literature inevitably has to express these multiple meanings.
I can't help but think, of course, that the scientist still uses this other area. It's true. He must, in very definitive and unequivocal fashion, speak. He must be able to communicate to his fellow scientists.
Yes.
And yet I am, I think, fundamentally, and really in an excited fashion, most impressed by the aesthetic features of science. A scientist still finds a beauty and a grace and a formal delight in the structure of a theory. He still is a marvelously creative and aesthetic person when he develops a hypothesis.
Well, I entirely agree. I mean, there is no question that the aesthetic aspect of science is a very important one. One hears mathematicians speak of the ugliness of certain equations and the elegance of others. But nevertheless, while he is working, he has to have this language has to be purified in this one-to-one relationship. He has to be very careful that his words don't say more than one thing at a time. Whereas it seems to me in poetry and in literature in general, one of the great arts is how to say many things at the same time. I mean, look at a play by Shakespeare. This proceeds on one level. He was an exceedingly good playwright. I mean, it proceeds admirably on this storytelling level. But all the time, owing to his extraordinary use of language, everything is going up in tangents in every direction. The real genius of Shakespeare, which is the fact that you are living in many worlds of experience at the same time, owing to his extraordinary use of language. Well, you can't use language in this way in science. I mean, you have to purify it in another way. You have to get it down to this naked, absolutely clear one-to-one relationship.
What is this dimension of charity? Sympathy? Empathy?
Well, this and general goodwill. I mean, and after all, in any given culture, I mean, let us face it, we are at once the beneficiaries and the victims of our culture. I mean, without our culture, we just couldn't do anything at all. We should be baboons, apes. But given any given culture is ambivalent. It permits one at once, at the same time, one and the same time, to be fully human, but at the same time, it limits our humanity. I mean, it imposes certain kinds of prejudices, certain kinds of likes and dislikes upon us. And I think it's perfectly true to say, as a man that I know you admire, Dr. Maslow, Abraham Maslow, said that any self-actualizing human being is one who, to some extent, breaks out of his culture. And after all, I mean, one sees that, in fact, all the great seers and religious prophets have always broken out of their culture. I mean, merely to say, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, is breaking out of a narrow culture which insists that you shall love only this person and that everybody else is not your neighbor. And I think we have to see that the people who have broken out of their culture, the seers and the prophets, are essentially right, and that unless we follow their advice and follow it awfully quickly, we're going to be making an appalling...
The dimensions you described, are you satisfied with the levels at which they're appearing today?
No. I mean, we obviously have to do much more than we are doing, and we have to do it awfully quick, because, after all, we're faced by a great number of problems which are absolutely unique in history. I mean, nothing like the explosive population increase has ever happened before, and nothing like the explosive technological advance has ever happened before, and nothing like the explosive advance in knowledge has happened before. We're living in a world of sort of what may be called chronic revolution, chronic upheaval, and unless we break out of the culture which imprisons us within a world of nationalism and militarism, given the hydrogen bomb, we're obviously in imminent danger. And also, given this kind of culture which causes us to spend an enormous proportion of our resources on the armament race, we are not going to be able to solve the ecological problem of man upon the earth. We are not going to be able to solve the problem of a species which is increasing at the rate of 50 million per annum on a limited environment. I mean, this is going to require all our goodwill and all our intelligence and all our knowledge. And if we spend a great deal of our energies on something else, we're not going to be able to solve the problem. Moreover, I think that if we look at this problem, we may get away from the perfectly insoluble problems of power politics onto the soluble, possibly soluble problems of ecology. I mean, I think that it's high time that we started thinking not merely in terms of politics and ideology, but in terms of biology and the relationship of man to his environment. And only in this way, by shifting the attention from what cannot be solved, which is the clash of power, but to what perhaps can be solved, which is the future of humanity upon this planet, shall we be able to escape from this frightful impasse in regard to power politics which we face at this moment.
While it's certainly important to pose the question, to think about the problem, what does one do?